Well, here we are again, talking about Two and a Half Men and its trans inclusion. Though this time we are shorter Charlie Sheen and up an Ashton Kutcher, so I guess with this trans inclusion we're really trying to figure out if this is going to have gone downhill in the past 9 or so years since that first surprisingly good quality episode featuring a trans male character who was given respect and opportunity to be funny and educate without coming off too much like a special episode.
Jill? Bill.
And we're also going to have to figure out whether changing from Charlie Sheen to Ashton Kutcher actually matters at all. My theory is that it doesn't, but I'm always ready to be surprised. So yeah, we're talking about Season 11's Episode 9, titled Numero Uno Accidente Lawyer, and Episode 10, titled On Vodka, On Soda, On Blender, On Mixer. And that's right, we get 2 whole episodes featuring a trans character, which means twice as much time to do it right. Or wrong if things go poorly, but my hopes are up because I'm trying to be more optimistic with these older episodes right now. Heck, there are some supportive old people out there and they must have learned to be kind and understanding towards trans issues from something, and why can't that something have been Two and a Half Men? Also, this is a trans woman episode, which is also great, because it means we get to see if Two and a Half Men is able to cover trans women as well as they covered trans men. But before we can get to that, I need to tell you about today's sponsor. The sponsor being... It's my Patreon. I don't think I've actually got a sponsor today. Do I? I don't. It's Patreon. Thank you to the Patreons. Thanks for paying me money. You keep the channel going. With all that said, it's time to move on to the actual video essay and get our teeth into the trans episodes at the heart of today's discussion.
I don't usually meet women.
So we start our first episode off with Ashton Kutcher talking to a beautiful woman while Alan looks on. Where the fuck's Charlie? What? Oh, well, hang on. That's right. I forgot I'd already mentioned that change of actors. Sorry, it's just so jarring to visually see it occurring. Ashton plays a character named Walden, who is basically the same as Charlie's character, so you don't really need to learn anything new to keep watching.
I see no problem.
It's not me that she'd be interested in.
Okay, that's a lie. The character is the same in the sense that they were the rich ones who allowed the fancy beach house to happen, but Walden is very different in regards to attitude, temperament, and vibe towards women compared to Charlie's clear and evident womanizing character. And I have to say this to alleviate the anger of any fans who might have got annoyed at my sweeping generalizations about shows. And the beautiful woman here isn't the trans woman of the episode, so we can just sort of skip through all this opening stuff.
Once I saw Justin Timberlake at a Microsoft party. Lady boner!
I guess one thing to note is that Walden is a nicer guy than Charlie. He's more looking for the right person and not necessarily the most beautiful, most available to sleep with him, while Alan has remained in the same sort of lecherous older guy boat who treats women like some sort of object that guys can pass around.
I'm gonna tell her it's not gonna work out.
If you don't want her, can I have her?
Yeah, not great stuff for the character, but maybe Alan is going to learn some grander lesson within this two-parter about how he sees women through some interactions with a specific one from a particular group of interest to us. I don't know, I'm just spitballing. Passing the time as the show introduces us to all these new characters and dynamics that are just not that good or interesting. I don't want to toot the horn that the show has gone downhill this early, because the trans rep might be good, but I'll be honest and say that the comedy, at the very least, seems to have gone off a cliff compared to the earlier seasons that I'd watched previously. Anyway, we get our initial meeting premise for the trans woman of the episode when Alan and his niece go to a gay bar, what with the niece being gay and so telling him the secret that there are plenty of straight women here for him to hook up with at this gay bar, though some of those straight women are also on the niece's radar because you know that whole enforced heterosexuality that leads to supposedly straight women sleeping with lesbians while out on the town and just acting like it was the alcohol that made them do it. I mean, you can kiss 100 boys in bars, shoot another shot to try and stop the feeling. You can say it's just the way you are, make another excuse, another stupid reason. Good luck, babe. At the same time that we have some stereotypical classic gay bar shenanigans going on, Ashton's story has a lot of weird rape vibe jokes to it, which is just uncomfortable to say the least.
Right now, you could do anything to me, and I wouldn't remember.
Alan, on the other hand, meets Paula, who initially thinks he's gay because the show likes to keep making jokes about Alan's lack of masculinity and how that ties to perceptions of queerness, though of course gay people can be hypermasculine, or regular masculine, or feminine. It's frankly a little bit of a tiring standard to go back to for comedy. A bit of the basic bitch shit for a show to pull that really gives off the vibe that the writers really are not trying that hard.
Because if I told you, you wouldn't have come.
Yes, I would. I just would have dressed better.
And we get a little bit of investment banker-based flirting between Paula and Alan, an innuendo-laced conversation that I'm sure is stimulating for someone in the audience. A shout out to whoever that might be in your weirdly specific fetish. We then cut to them post the sex, with Alan clearly enjoying it more than Paula, mostly because Paula has something that she feels like she should have revealed to Alan before the act. That's right, it's that she's a trans woman, though immediately we now have to have a discussion about that point.
But there is something I probably should have told you before we slept together.
Oh, God.
Here's the thing, for a hookup from a random bar, I don't think you need to tell anybody your trans status, and frankly it's actually likely to be dangerous to do that with someone you don't know that well in a private space. Hate crimes exist after all, and some men will react pretty badly to the information. If you're intending to long-term date a partner, then that's really where information like being trans does become a more essential thing that needs to get discussed, but otherwise it's kinda like religious background, or economic position, or who you vote for. Not really relevant to just sex. Now, obviously, that is a somewhat controversial stance for a lot of cis people, because I find many cis people have a particular view of trans women, especially that sees them as either gross abominations or devious tricksters seeking to lure men into getting shocked by a penis in the bedroom, and in reality, trans people run the whole gamut of presentation in a way that there are plenty of trans women out there that you would not immediately be able to recognize as trans women. While preferences do play a role, nobody should be able to force you to have sex, I do think it's important for cis people to be introspective about why they would be okay with sleeping with a woman up until finding out she is trans. Like, surely the attraction that you have has not gone anywhere, and if it has and been replaced by disgust, then it's really worth analysing that reaction and seeing it for what it is, which is transphobia.
I had sex with her! What? I had sex with her at the Marriott! Oh, why? I didn't know!
Doesn't mean you have to sleep with anyone you don't want to, but if that situation occurs, maybe take it as an opportunity to evaluate your reactions and internal stereotypes. Regardless, for the show, Paula tells us that she used to be a guy called Paul for the first 40 years of her life, to the shocked reactions and laughs of the audience.
You see, for the first 40 years of my life, I was a man named Paul.
Which I'm not so sure I'm happy about, to be honest. I mean, reacting like that implies that being trans is shocking, and also implies that there is some kind of joke here maybe on Alan for having had sex with a trans woman without knowing, both of which go some way towards fueling that exact bigotry I was discussing earlier. And Alan tries to play it off as not that big of a deal, because he's clearly taking a second to react to it. Paula then starts kind of accurately detailing the surgery process to the questions of Alan, who reacts in a way that indicates he definitely does not want that information at all, And from this so far, I have to admire the fact that Alan is taking this in stride and not reacting in a negative manner.
Oh, and I like you. I mean, we have a lot in common, clearly more than I realized.
And also that Paula is being allowed to be humorous around it and come across as a humanized character who just has this trans trait and element about her. I mean, still early days for this whole thing, but so far, so good? Alan even goes on to tell Paula that he really likes her, and they have a bunch in common, and he doesn't want her to leave. Like, he is taking this all as something that doesn't affect the perception that he has of her as a woman, that he is interested in as a repeatedly confirmed straight man. And that's something that is important, is that despite all the things joked about Alan's sexuality, he is definitively straight.
Last gay that have sex with other guys? Sure. But I know you're straight.
And that way we don't get any questions here about his sexuality being affected by having slept with Paula. She is, as she says, as much of a woman as any other he has been with. And we also get the first really funny trans joke I've seen in a while, as Alan tells Paula a piece of advice. That advice being that no guy likes to hear his girlfriend talk about how her dick used to be bigger than his.
Not gonna let one little thing come between us.
Oh, it wasn't little.
No guy likes to hear that his girlfriend had a bigger penis than he does.
This whole thing, however, leads to a breakfast conversation with the trans woman being the topic of it, as Walden seems confused to how exactly one would have sex with a trans woman, as well as also using the fact she is a trans woman to question Alan's sexuality, all that stuff that I said the show was doing a great job because it wasn't making a big deal out of, so I guess let's move that thumbs up to a slight thumbs up.
I can't believe that you would. Well, then again, it's you.
I mean, even when the gay niece compliments Alan on the fact that he's sleeping with a trans woman without any judgment, it does still come off as a little bit special treatment. Like, Alan is being congratulated for not being a judgmental prick about a woman's backstory, and that really, honestly, should be the baseline. Like, I get it. Normalizing takes time, and making it clear that those who are comfortable sleeping with trans women are in the right is a good place to start that process, but it's just a shame, I suppose, to see how far we have to go, because this is Tret, and is still Tret, as if the guy in question is a real hero for dating trans women.
You going out with a post-op transgendered person without any judgment? Very enlightened.
That he's really been super progressive and open-minded and should be celebrated in a way that, frankly, should still be 100% reserved for the trans women themselves, who have to go through a mountain hill of difficulty compared to the molehill that these trans dating men have to. However, we move on to our next scene, which is Alan and Paula going on a date to the movies, with the scene starting as off as Alan asks Paula if she wants to split a hot dog, before then immediately apologising because I guess he's thinking back to that trans surgery stuff that kept getting told to him.
They slice the penis down the middle.
Oversensitive cis people who are hyper aware of what they're doing to the point they see issues where there kind of aren't any. At the very least, it's a lot better than being a bigot, and it all seems to be going smoothly. Like, there are a few hitches, but Alan is clearly happy to work with this past thing, and Paula is moving on from it, and into Alan, so I can hardly see where things are going to go wrong.
I think it's pretty clear that I'm willing to work around things in this relationship.
I'm having a great time with you.
Oh, well, so am I.
Oh, that felt like bad foreshadowing. Is something going to go wrong? Can we please have a positive ending to a trans story, like, I don't know, maybe she becomes a main character and becomes his long-term girlfriend and then wife, and gives us a long-term insight into a trans person's life rather than a much shorter, immediate one that, while still humanizing and positive, is not as good as getting to have that permanent place in the forefront of a show that many people who could do with having a prominent trans character will watch. Yeah, I think I'm setting myself up here for disappointment, considering I've only bookmarked 2 episodes for this Paula character, so that seems unlikely. I mean, there are a few jokes about the whole fact that Paula takes a masculine position in the relationship, opening a door for Alan, giving him a jacket when he feels cold, and yet, I mean, this doesn't seem to really be an issue. Like, Alan doesn't take umbrage with it, he seems fine with it happening, in fact, and nobody calls any attention to it, except for the show, I suppose, using it as comedy for us in the audience. But it's fine.
It's chilly in here.
Oh, here. Take my jacket.
Oh, cozy.
All of this leads to a fight in the theatre, as Alan says that he is the man, and so he needs to go and tell a rude patron who is speaking during the movie on his phone off. A telling off which ends with Paula swooping in and smacking the dude in the face when he threatens Alan. To which Alan reacts really positively, seeming to be super hyped to have a woman who stands up for him, telling her that he loves her and kissing her as the rest of the theatre claps for them.
Paula, hashtag I love you.
Sorry, did that turn into my fan fiction at the end there? What the fuck is happening? This all seems really good. Like, I'm waiting for that other heavy shoe to drop on the trans community, as it always seems to do, but right now it's feeling like we might have got a second W out of the 2.5 Men franchise.
I'm by winning. I win here and I win there. Now what?
How do we stay winning with this one? It seems beyond belief for that to occur. Like, we have all these setups which would normally lead to a man questioning his own masculinity and hyperfixating on the supposed masculinity of the trans woman, but instead Alan seems to accept it as part of who she is, and just a representation of her as a woman, which is great, because trans women can be masculine, and that isn't a problem or something which secretly makes them a man, and that's it. I mean, we still have another episode, of course, but this one goes out on that high. It ends in an amazing place, one which kinda just has me shocked. I mean, it's not the best trans representation ever, in fact it probably sits around a sort of high mid, but for a bloke joke show from Chuck Lorre, who also worked on Big Bang Theory and Rosanna, so, you know, kinda surprising as shit stuff, and Lee Aronson, who... wait a minute. I know Lee Aronson. He was a writer for The Love Boat, a show that, let me just check. Yeah, there it is. A positive trans story arc as well. I mean, not one that he wrote, but maybe he got some tips from some people in the industry on how to include trans people in a way that doesn't let the trans community down. I mean, I have to assume, because it doesn't happen all that frequently, and this seems like way too much of a coincidence for 2.5 Men to have done it right twice. Anyways, with that said, let's move on to where this story continues and wraps itself up, in Season 11, Episode 10. This one begins sort of where we left off, as wait, hang on, stop. I'm allowed a tangent, actually. In fact, I demand a tangent. I have to ask the question of what's the deal with the show at this point? Like, originally, 2.5 Men had clearly established itself as a case of two brothers who lived together due to circumstances with one of the brothers' sons after a marriage collapse and divorce, all of which forces them together as family and hijinks ensue.
Well, that's kind of complicated.
Why was Uncle Charlie kissing Rose?
Well, that was...
But, like, then Charlie died in the show, only metaphorically dying in Hollywood in real life, and they just had a billionaire tech guy move in and buy the house and just keep Alan around as company. And it got even weirder when Alan's son flew the coop and went to join the army, getting replaced by that lesbian character named Jenny, who is the long-lost daughter of Charlie, and then kind of becomes the new half-man for Season 11, before then getting replaced with an actual male child in the 12th season, which is probably for the best, because I don't really know what having a lesbian be the half-man says, except for probably something very comedically homophobic.
I know you would never intentionally try to hurt me.
Like, yeah, it's all a bit dodgy. And then at the very end of the show, they reveal that Charlie didn't even actually die. He just got trapped in a pit for years by the evil stalker neighbor Rose, who turned him into a psychopath, who then comes at all his loved ones before he gets killed by a piano.
Winning.
Sorry to spoil the show, and I'm sure some of you would have loved a big old deep dive on this one, but to be honest, I gotta finish the Riverdale thing, and I'd rather, like, do a Pokemon video after this to rectify the horrifying video put out by another Lily in this space that I would really like people to stop mixing me up with, please. I'm not Lily Orchard, she sucks. But all of this stuff really does just sell me to the fact that while it can maybe, as we will find out in this video, still do good trans representation like it used to, the spirit of the show is basically dead. The core premise that kept it going hasn't really been kept up, and the characters that exist at this point have no real reason to exist with each other. The comedy has grown a bit stale, and the idea has lost steam, which is fine for a show in its 11th season, though frankly that started happening around about season 7 if you ask me. Like, nothing lasts forever. Sometimes shows just need to die. Some need to never have been born, looking at you, Big Bang Theory, but everything has to end. And as a showrunner or studio, it's sometimes just worth going out with dignity and your head held high. Though I guess that makes less money, so I see why they squeeze these things for everything they're worth until there is nothing left of value in them.
Are you kidding me? After everything, all that!
Back to the episode that we're meant to be talking about. It's Christmas time in the show, baby! Which means that it's been an indeterminate amount of time since the last episode, and that kind of makes me think that maybe these two crazy kids have been dating for, like, longer than just a week, which is good to see a trans woman in a slightly long-term loving relationship. I'm hoping that she turns up, of course, otherwise this is going to be weird and disappointing to even talk about. And oh, okay, thank God. After the opening bit, we do get to see Alan and Paula together sharing some time for the holidays.
Here for some mulled cider, m'lady?
And it begins with some more stuff that I would call actually kind of funny comments from a trans woman. Like, Paula talks about how she takes hormones, and how if they interact with the elements in a cider that is offered to her, then that will make her beard grow back in. To which Alan merely just says how she is so lucky that she can get a beard to grow, because he really struggles with it. This is all kind of nice and nicely laid out in a way that doesn't call into question Paula's womanhood thanks to this fact, isn't used by her partner to make her feel worse about the relationship. And I mean, that's what I want to see on the screen for cisgender audiences to learn from. However, there are some relationship issues here, as Paula seems to be way more obsessed with the game than with Alan, as he tries to get her to kiss him under the mistletoe. And while yes, this does seem to be leaning into a potentially transphobic aspect of playing up the masculine elements of trans women for laughter, like, haha, sports is a guy thing, and because she used to be a guy, she now sits like a dude and wants to see the men throw balls around, and yeah, that isn't great from a lot of angles. Like, women can enjoy sports, it doesn't make them men to be into that kind of shit. But as par for the course of stereotypes go in the old days of 10 years ago comedy, it was kinda just the basic fallback many lazy sitcoms went for.
I should have given it to him power right then kiss him.
To be fair, a cis woman in this exact place with the same intention of showing her as a tomboy would probably act in the same way, but that does still have more negative connotations when it's combining potential sexism and perspective on gender formativity with perceived gender identity with the existence of a trans woman. It feels like it's going in the direction of having Alan come across as the woman in the relationship, while Paula is the man in the relationship. All of which buys, of course, into our perceived ideas of relationship as being inherently heterosexual. And so all forms must fall into that paradigm. But the show then moves into Paula feeling herself up because she's having phantom nuts issues, something which is not actually uncommon for pretty much anybody who loses or removes a certain body part. You will in fact get phantom reactions from them a lot. Yet at this point, the hyperfixation on the masculine elements of Paula is moving from being something which is part of just who she is and her experience, and into a sort of negative stereotype because it keeps getting mentioned.
Okay, great. Game's in overtime. Mwah! Come on!
What I'm saying is that this is getting less charming as it goes on, and more seeming like it's been done for audience laughter purposes specifically. The show could really do with some affirmation-based humour, some reminders of Paula's womanhood to counteract all of this at this point. Though, yet again, Alan doesn't seem to have any issue with Paula talking about her phantom nuts, instead taking it as a chance to suggest that maybe they have sex, before Paula's roommate walks in. Well, I say roommate, in fact it's Paula's ex-wife, who I guess they still live with despite the fact that Paula transitioning must have clearly ended the relationship, so that's sort of nice maybe.
Rachel, this is Alan. Alan, this is my ex-wife.
Oh, I didn't know you were married.
It could still go bad places, but people being adult enough to have this happen and remain around each other in each other's lives rather than turning it into a problem is a good thing to see. It's a good thing for cis people to learn about the process of, you know, not letting someone's transgender identity ruin your own life and turn you bitter. It's all kinda going by smoothly. Paula and her ex-wife do get along really well. They share shoes and tips, so that's great for them. And the ex-wife is possibly going to get a chiropractor's visit from Alan at some point as well, because that's his job. Before Alan then makes a weird as fuck joke about Paul that gets played off with laughter and smiles from her.
No weirder than me dating a dude.
But, like, that's not affirming. That's not affirming of Paula's gender identity at all. Like, even if Alan is comfortable with all of this and with who Paula is in a way that doesn't interfere with his own straight sexuality, the show does heavily lean into constantly hammering home the masculinity of Paula as a person. And maybe, just chill the fuck out for a second, alright? Find something else to do some jokes about. Maybe hire some writers from the trans community to give a bit of variety, so it's not just the same shit that's already got pretty fucking tiring.
Then again, I didn't know you had a penis, so...
She lost them both at about the same time.
I am realizing that I'm asking way too much of 2.5 Men here. This show, by this point, is the definition of tired comedy, but it still sucks to see with a trans character, especially one that could and really does have the potential to be super positive, rather than getting ruined by the whole show around them. Our next scene features no Paula, but it does feature Alan and the ex-wife talking about her, with a plentiful dose of dead naming and misgendering in that old cis way. You know the one, where cis people think that if you're talking about a trans person pre the point that you think of them as having properly transitioned, whatever the fuck that might be, being dependent on the cisgender person's definition of what really makes a man or woman.
So Paul's change must have been a big adjustment for you.
He said he wanted to become a woman.
Try and refer to a trans person as they would like to be referred to, as going back infinitum since the point they come out. It's gonna make it a hell of a lot easier for everyone involved, rather than, like, gendering them correctly and then misgendering them depending on the time period that you think of them as. During the conversation, though, we get some more insight from the ex-wife, who at the time of being told was really angry with Paula and threatened to do the surgery themselves with a kitchen knife. Maybe don't emulate that exactly. I can understand cis partners being upset and angry to find out the person they love for a long time maybe isn't who they exactly thought they were, but, you know, avoid physical threat. And then the ex-wife kinda sexually harasses Alan by telling him to go lower and then moving his hand onto her butt.
A little lower.
Okay.
Oh, I think I see where this might be going. Alan tells her that while she might be into him, he is dating her ex-husband, which is good, though he then keeps holding her ass before making a joke about where his other hand might be.
Still there.
I'm just glad you don't know where my other hand is.
I don't think I like Alan that much. I mean, okay, he's accepting of the trans woman's existence and his attraction to her. That's great for him. but he's a womanizing piece of shit otherwise, and frankly, I want better for my trans characters. I hope for them to get the best partners that they possibly can. And I want to quickly interrupt this sequence of events though to let you see this scene of Ashton Kutcher trying to ask out a lesbian at a waxing parlour for his lesbian friend, while screaming and crying because he decided to do it while getting his genitalia waxed.
I wanted to see if you...
Legitimately, actually, pretty funny. Kind of the best scene so far as a comedy. I like the premise, I like the way that it approaches queer people as relatable and covering a whole bunch of different perspectives, and I like watching Ashton Kutcher sobbing.
Crying.
I get that.
Back to our regularly scheduled programming though, Alan and Paula have sex. Alan makes some comments about how her vagina is a marvel and that the guy who did it must have been an artist, which I think is a compliment for a trans woman's vagina. I mean, it's certainly not an insult at the very least, so let's take that win there and lock it up before it gets taken away from us. Alan and Paula then get into the relationship conversation, with Alan wanting to know if they are exclusive. I guess maybe to figure out if he can fuck her ex-wife or not. And Paula seems reluctant to have the conversation, before then talking about how she always promised herself that if she became a woman, a real woman, and it's nice to see that trans women and real women are not being used exclusive to each other here, and are in fact used to reference one another, so good.
But I always promised myself that if I had the courage to become a real woman...
Sorry, I'm constantly waiting for that big old other shoe to drop, so I'm hesitant about giving too much of a thumbs up till we hit the end of the episode. But anyway, Paula committed to the fact that if she came out as trans, she would be a free spirit, or in her own words,
that woman would be a total slut.
Alan takes this as the confirmation he needs that it's okay to sleep with her ex-wife. And that really reaffirms the whole Alan is a piece of shit thing I had from earlier. You can have an open relationship and be okay with sleeping around, but you probably want to specifically talk details when considering each other's long-term ex-partners. Obviously, that's just basic human decency, and I think we can all see how this story ends, and how Paula might be leaving the show. Alan goes on a date with Rachel, the ex-wife lady, and then Paula walks in on them at the tavern or bar where they are, to kind of everybody's surprise.
What's going on here?
Well, this is an awkward coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. I come here every Friday night.
We then find out that Rachel planned this to happen, that she knew Paula comes here at this time and wanted Paula to see this. It was designed to make Paula jealous, and it clearly speaks to the fact that these two really don't have all their shit resolved if one of them is using the partner of the other to try and get at them. It's a somewhat nicely not related to the transgender aspect issue to have occur though. This could happen between any grouping of people, and this time it just happens to include a trans woman, so great to see that. Nice for a trans woman to be included in the way that TV shows show women as bitchy manipulators who are constantly trying to attack and hurt each other through machinations. Though that great to be included is soured by the whole thing it's been included in.
He can date whoever he wants.
Okay, you only brought him here to make me jealous. Oh, please, don't flatter me.
We learn more though, as Rachel is clearly doing this because she wants Paula to feel bad about losing the guy she liked. That speaks to some unhealthy ideas there. And Paula then talks about how Alan isn't someone she likes that much. He's just the only guy who wasn't freaked out by her being a trans woman. And that speaks to some unhealthy ideas there too. Also, I really don't like that idea because, trust me, trans women can definitely find dates. Sometimes way too plentiful, with too many guys who seem to be strangely into the fact that the person they're dating is a trans person, and that's its own issue. Chasers. Alan, however, takes this as the chance to explain to these two women that they both still clearly care for each other, and are interested in one another, and I guess works to set them up in a what will be lesbian relationship, so win for the trans lesbians, and a loss for Alan here, I suppose. Alan is a big old creep about what happens as Rachel and Paula kiss, but you know what? Nice for these two to finally realise that just because Paula came out as trans doesn't mean they have to break up or not be together. Sexuality is fluid, and love can change the way you see it. Sometimes you love someone beyond the confines of gender identity, and that's an actually alright message to end on, and a perfectly great way for a trans woman to be leaving this burning mess of a shit show that the rest of 2.5 Men has become.
I do miss you. I miss you too.
Oh, how nice is this?
But yeah, that's nice. Alan doesn't even seem to be bitter about it. Heck, he even encouraged them both to see it. And the end Ashton Kutcher monologue refers to both the lesbian couples in this episode, calling Paula and Rachel lesbians, which they are because the show at least respects Paula as a real woman. Nice.
While visions of lesbians danced in his head.
Thumbs up, end episode. So where does that leave us for a conclusion, I suppose, is the question. And where it leaves us is that I have to do one more thing before we get there. Yes, I know, but it's due diligence, alright, and we need to talk about the actor for Paula and the writers for this episode. We already mentioned the show creators and their background, so I won't go into that, but the actor for Paula is a cis woman, Paula Marshall, and there is a lot to say about that in particular, that we've discussed before, and will probably do again, about how trans actors playing trans roles is great for getting trans people a foot in the door in a notoriously difficult industry to access as a minority, as well as letting people in the audience see an actual trans person on their screens for them to relate to.
There's this kind of intense burden of representation on the few of us that are succeeding in the industry.
It can also influence the personal experience that an actor brings to a role and how they play that role. A trans person can provide information that a cis actor just could not. And on top of all that, we now have an additional reason to want to see trans actors in trans roles. And that's thanks to my recent Pretty Little Liars video, in which the creator of the show, Marlene King, literally said that they didn't hire a trans actor because she wasn't aware that you could do that. So yeah, let's hire more trans people so people know that we do in fact exist and can act and can be hired. Jesus Christ. On the additional note for Paula Marshall though, a fun little fact is that she is the sister of Bob Marshall, a Virginia state representative who was a huge proponent of bathroom bills before getting defeated in the general election for 2017 by transgender woman Danica Rome, the first openly transgender candidate to be elected to state legislature. In response to Bob losing, Paula posted this to her Facebook page, talking about how her brother being judgmental and homophobic led to him getting his karma and losing without dignity. Oof, ouch, owie, that's gotta hurt coming from your own family. But all I can say is hell fucking yeah, Paula Marshall. You get your brother, you piece of shit brother.
I did ask about him misgendering her, and he said, quote, DNA doesn't lie and biology isn't bigotry, and I taught grammar.
On the note of the writing staff for these episodes, the only additional person involved beyond the show creators is Jim Patterson, who's just another male producer and screenwriter, so there's nothing to really say about the writing staff specifically having trans people involved in it or trans consultation for it, both of which are things that I would encourage shows to look into if they're going to do a trans arc or a trans character. It makes sense to have people with life experience coming in and helping to ensure that the representation isn't harmful, and also maybe does in fact do some work towards letting the audience see new angles on the trans community that those outside of it would not be able to think of. Regardless, we now move properly to our conclusion here, and the conclusion is that this was all really good. There were a few spots that I wasn't so sold on, a few bits that maybe I would have done differently, but at the end of the day, it was a positive representation of a trans woman that allowed her to exist in ways that normally we don't get to without being shamed or attacked for it. And it gave her a happy ending, a trans lesbian happy ending, which I'm always here for.
You two should kiss.
I don't have much more to say that I haven't already covered during the commentary. I normally like to lace my analysis within it so I don't forget what I wanted to say by the end. And yeah, well done 2.5 Men. You've officially won my Surprise Me with Good Trans Representation award twice in a row now, and that's pretty fucking rare, honestly. Most shows can barely manage to get one of those awards. However, everything else in your show is kind of garbage, so you know. Bummer for that one.
I'm your whore? Your whore!
So if you liked what I said here, or enjoyed the process, or felt it was all pretty decent to have on the other monitor while you focus on something else, and trust me, I get it, it's how I watch YouTube or any show these days that don't require my full attention, then please consider checking out some of my other videos, which should be on the sidebar or recommended at the end of this video. There's a lot of really good stuff in there on transgender representation in a variety of shows, as well as some more unique deep dives onto franchises like Harry Potter and Twilight. If you really like what I do, then please consider subscribing to my Patreon or going to my Ko-Fi and giving there. It all goes a long way to helping me keep this channel funded and running. Those in the 5 run-up category should be scrolling past the screen right now, and I'm truly grateful to everyone on there for allowing me this opportunity to make videos and get paid for doing it. I love what I make here, and even if it wasn't making money, I would definitely still keep coming back and doing it, but having my rent, food, power, and internet paid for by content creation eases the whole process and lets me focus on doing bigger and more effort-laden projects like I want to. At the end of the day, I would love for all art and passion stuff like this to be funded by the government, so artists could focus on doing whatever they want to do, but while the world isn't like that, you in the audience can simulate that effect through stuff like Patreon. So once more, thanks to everyone who has subscribed, and also thank you to everyone who watched this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great day.